Welcome to the Home Business Podcast with Richard Captain Henderson, publisher of Home Business Magazine, and Sherilyn Colleen, managing editor. This how-to show helps you successfully operate your home-based business.
Greetings and welcome to the Home Business Podcast. I'm Richard Captain Henderson, your skipper at Home Business TV.
And I'm Lynn, your co-host.
Let's cure, foresee, and get it away. The job ain't done till the paperwork is finished.
We've all heard this painful statement, and it applies even more to a small business owner at startup with their financial management.
Yes, you have to set up a system of bookkeeping, accounting, and basic financial records to succeed as a home-based entrepreneur.
Today's guest, Eddie Davis of FinSync, is an expert with simple tips and advice on how you can manage your bookkeeping.
Eddie Davis is VP of Business Development for FinSync, a business financing network, and he's here today to free up more of your time from the pain of keeping the books.
So greetings, Eddie Davis. Welcome to our show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Excited to be on our show.
So another entrepreneur is dialing in from Atlanta.
That's right. We're based here very close to the Braves Stadium.
I can't believe how many people call in from the Atlanta area. It's just like it's really an entrepreneurial hub.
There's a lot going on here, and especially in the financial realm, a lot of development around town, and so it's a great place to be.
Oh, cool. Thanks for connecting in today.
Well, first off, how important is it for a small business owner to have a firm grasp on their business's financial status right from the beginning?
I think it's very important to get off on the right foot. For a small business, there's so much investment, there's so much hard work, and getting started incorrectly will cause wasted time over a period of years. So, it is worth the investment to, sit down and think about, how things should be organized. It's a question of categorization, and I think we'll talk about that, but also be thinking about, as you're setting up your business, the financial operations of that business. You want to set things up so that you as the owner, have as much time as you possibly can to do what your value add is, right? So as the owner, financial administration is probably not why you got in business. You want to be spending your time, conducting the business, not necessarily administering the business.
Yeah, I think some of it is you're not going to really know how well the business is doing, and you're going to get disorganized, and you're not going to be able to track expenses if you don't build the foundation initially.
Absolutely. And especially when you think about, at certain periods of time, it becomes, supremely important to be able to accomplish things like getting ready for taxes in an efficient way. So, getting things set up and having that structure in place from the beginning is going to, make it a much smoother process for you. And like you said, that ability to, track how the business is growing, or if maybe there's a little bit of a decline, why is that happening? But having access to good information as you build a business is hugely important. And
I think it's safe to say also that the longer you put that off, the harder it's going to be. It's something you want to do initially. And if you're waiting, a week after you get started, a month, having to backtrack, and build in reverse to get you up to the present day, I think it just makes it logarithmically more challenging.
More challenging and more costly. Yeah.
I don't know where I came up with that word logarithmically, but
exponentially.
Let's talk a little bit about the steps for, a home business owner should take to build that foundation, for an accounting and bookkeeping system. Talk with us a little bit about some of those steps.
So I think it starts with, as the business owner, getting clear about what the intentions are. So not in terms of accounting, but in terms of, how this business delivers value, how it interacts with customers, how it interacts with vendors. That's the basis. From there, getting that codified with a chart of accounts is a great activity to take with an accountant. Like you said, early in the process, establishing a chart of accounts that will help you map out, the inflows and outflows of the business and keep things categorized correctly for a period of years. Those would be the places that I would start. So it's,
you just hit a real key word, which is categorization. And every business is going to be a little bit unique. And the business owner themselves have to, break down those categories. They can sit with an accountant and get advice, but they've got to think through their business and, break down, okay, where are my revenue sources going to come in, and categorize that. What are my expenses going to be, and categorize that. I think that's a lot where the thinking needs to be up front, but it's critical for the business owner to think those through in advance.
Absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head there. It's what expenses are tied to what revenue, right? And that's really how you drive profitability. So, what they are independently and which ones are sort of paired together.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you actually might have the same almost breakdown of account categories on revenue and expenses, so you can tie those together. But you're right. If you don't get that mapped out initially, it'll get just really confusing, and you can't actually tie what expenses are to what revenue.
Absolutely. And that's the level of detail you want to get to. That may sound intimidating, but it's really not if you get started in the right way.
So Eddie, you've been talking about these core things that you should have in place for your accounting and bookkeeping. Are there any other points that you want to share that we haven't touched on so far?
I think getting into a rhythm is really important with regards to this. So, allowing things to sit too long without being reviewed as the business owner, I highly recommend using a recurring calendar event or something along those lines to get into a monthly cadence of sitting down. Once the bank statements and credit card statements are released, that's a good time to sit down and just double check that your categorization is done in the first place, that you still feel comfortable with it. Being sure that you have the documentation to prove your expenses, things of that nature. But make it habitual, right? It's going to go a lot easier if you can get in that habit from the beginning versus, being 3 months down the road and trying to figure out something that happened, maybe even in a prior year. That makes things so much more challenging and time consuming. So getting in that, frequent, let's say monthly in the beginning, should be more than sufficient. Getting into that rhythm and habit, I think, is really important.
Well, yeah, you mentioned one thing that's really important is, bounce that, you're going to set up a system, but you got to bounce that against what's actually happening. You get your bank statement, you download that, you're seeing where all the actual expenses are, and do a sanity check and make sure the categorization and how you're breaking that down, is making sense as the rubber hits the road in your business.
Yes. And the categorization, the nice thing is a lot of the modern accounting systems will do categorization, and you can train them to categorize correctly, but you still need to check it. Every transaction is different, but you want that peace of mind, right? After the period is over, that you've reviewed it and you feel good about it.
Yeah, I like what you also said about habitual, because even after you get it set up, you've got to stick with it each day. I mean, I try to force myself to go in every day and just update the bookkeeping really quickly, because if you let it pile up, then it's you're 3 weeks down, 1 month ago. What was that expense for? And it just makes it easier, even the little bit each day, to get in the habit of working it, because your numbers are important.
And I think that daily part is a great thing to talk about as well, especially on the expense side, because there are so many systems, free systems up through paid systems, where you can simply send in a receipt the second that you have it. So that's another habit that you want to develop. When you see an expense cross your desk, or you might be out and about purchasing something, go ahead and put that system, put that receipt or that proof of payment into the file. And you can do that from any smart device these days. So that's a great habit to develop as well.
Well, that's good. We also, recommend here at Home Business that you work with an accountant, but that, you can easily do that bookkeeping yourself each day. So, do you have any advice on how to make that work? How to make that boundary work?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it is typically not recommended that a small business owner file their own business taxes, for example. I wouldn't recommend, unless you have a background in it, that you set up your chart of accounts. So, thinking about working with an accountant, I would recommend talking with somebody, like I said, very early on, to get that chart of accounts established from the beginning. Get a high level summary of, from the accountant, of how they intend it to be used, and do your best to follow that. But then you're going to check in with them periodically, certainly before tax time, but once a quarter or something like that in the beginning would be worthwhile as well.
That's a really good point. You don't want to get to the end of the year And then the accountant looks at it, wait a minute, we got to organize it this way. You want to, get started with that accountant. And then, after you set up the system, let them check what you're doing so that, throughout the tax year, you'll have the records in a format he can use. I've had that problem before with my accountant.
That's right. You don't want to have to go back through the whole year and redo things. You want to nip it in the bud.
Yeah, I think also with an accountant, a point people don't think about a lot is, there are fees, it's a cost to work with an accountant, but a good accountant will actually, can actually save you money and would, think of deductions you hadn't thought of or thinks of ways of structuring the business that you hadn't. So, it might not just be a cost. You could actually, see more revenue in your business if you're doing everything accounting wise that you can to maximize your profits.
Absolutely. Accountants, beyond that, also thinking about efficiency. Accountants can be great efficiency consultants, looking at your process because they have that experience of looking at other people's businesses. So having one look over and say, hey, this expense as a ratio, to your sales of whatever type seems high. Just hearing that from somebody that's sort of seen lots of businesses and how they look from an accounting perspective, they can provide some great insights in that department as well.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. That's a great point. You're just seeing your own business, but they've seen it 100 times before, and they can show you what you're missing.
Yeah, and that's a lot of the value there as well.
So Eddie, as your business continues to grow, what accounting and bookkeeping steps are essential to reassess your financial management systems?
Well, I think one of the first things that you need to be thinking about is as a business that's maybe a solopreneur and you start to add extra people to your team. Those could be internal people, those could be external people. You need to think about, as the business owner, what's your highest value? What do you do best? What are you truly an expert in? Oftentimes that's going to derive most of the revenue for the business. And so the things that you're doing that are maybe not, driving either sales or great customer experience, maybe you're not where you should be spending your time. So as you start to add those other people, they need access to information as well. So, as we think about systems in place, oftentimes we're thinking about cloud systems, meaning a multi-user environment. So looking at, the types of permissions that you might give to employee 1, employee 2 would be a great thing to be thinking about. How can you make yourself efficient? How can you make them efficient? How do you give them the information they need, but maybe they don't need the whole picture, for example? So I'd be starting to think about things like that. You might also, when you move beyond that into more frequent conversations with an accountant, it may make sense to give them access directly and move to more of a monthly check-in or some sort of more frequent scenario where they're potentially doing that bookkeeping, at that point, right? It's at a certain point as the business owner, you're not going to bookkeep yourself anymore. And like you said, I think it's just a question of periodically checking in and thinking about, am I, as the business owner, using my number one resource, my time, as wisely as I could be?
Yeah, I like the point you're talking about where you get a lot of that up in the cloud and that it's virtual and access, because a lot of home business owners will, build businesses up through partnerships or work with people in virtual corporations. And that's, being able to share financial information, but also performance information, is really important. And you can do that with a little bit of forethought through, cloud-based systems.
Be thinking about those partnerships, and then be thinking about also your customer and vendor experience, right? Cloud-based systems play into those relationships as well in terms of getting paid, making payments, how much conversation back and forth is required to, be sure that everybody's on the same page. There's a lot of efficiencies that can be gained in the payments arena as well.
Yeah, points well taken that, all these things add up with time. Time is money. If you do this efficiently, your accounting and bookkeeping can, actually save you, a lot of money. But, all this bookkeeping talk does end up in one place, which is taxes, both business and personal. Eddie, Eddie, what briefly, what steps should a business owner take to be ready for tax season, be taking throughout the year?
So at the highest level, to keep your costs down and make that experience as painless as possible, you want things in order. for your accountant, right? The person that's going to, feel good that they have, appropriately reviewed everything and are comfortable with, the way that things are categorized and that the transactions are in order. So, ask the question to the accountant, how do you like information delivered to you? In most cases, it's going to be meaningful to have all of your expenses organized, have the proof of it, a document management system, keep it chronological, right? And then there's, there needs to be a way of tying that off to, here's an outflow of money on the bank account. It corresponds to, this invoice that I paid on this date and that sort of thing. So just be thinking about how can you convey that information, not just the what, but the why. Speaks to how things should be categorized, right? So, having the ability to tell the story of what those transactions are and why they mattered and who they belong to and all that sort of
The one thing I found, this all does kind of stem down to, working with your accountant. We're all in agreement. You should probably, you should use an accountant for your taxes, but to also, make sure that the accountant knows, potential deductions. Because sometimes if they don't really know your business that closely, to double check, expenses that make sure that the deductions are being taken properly, because the accountant needs to learn about your business also, and to really understand it before they can maximize the tax savings for you.
That's a great point. And in terms of to circle back to making that, maybe hiring an accountant, thinking about, as an interview question, do you currently work with other businesses specifically in my industry? And can you provide references there? To your point, that's exactly right. There are a lot of deductions that are industry specific or location specific. Having that nuanced expertise in that particular industry is very meaningful and can add up to quite a lot of savings potentially.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about, when you look at a business, you can make money by generating a profit on your sales, but then you can also make money by, minimizing your tax liability, legitimately and legally. And so, that's also, more profit in your pocket, but you got to look at it a different way, to make sure the paperwork's in order.
Absolutely. You can save money on the tax side and you can save money on the preparation side as well, just by doing a good job, doing things the way your accountant asks you to do them. A lot of the tips that we've covered, being habitual about reviewing things, those sorts of things are all great ideas. Absolutely.
Yeah, I just couldn't imagine anybody actually doing my taxes, just, providing all the information. But man, that is just such a grind. And, that's a place, you really want to outsource that with a good accountant.
Absolutely. It's something that, business owners, we don't have time to be experts in that. The amount of training to get to that point would be, so far away from the things that we need to be doing. So yeah, very, very clearly a need to, outsource that to an expert.
Yeah. There's just such a push among a lot of the software programs, particularly smaller businesses, hey, use this package to generate the taxes yourself. And you can do that, but boy, you can end up going down a rabbit hole. And then if you're not, maximizing your deductions, you could have wiped out any of your time savings with that.
Yep, absolutely. There's that old expression, you get what you paid for, and that's potentially an area where you will see that.
Okay, so wrapping things up, Eddie, if you have one piece of financial advice for a home-based business owner to achieve success in their business, what would it be?
I think what I would always be thinking about as a home-based business owner is, what's the value of my time as the owner? What's my highest value? Meaning, what do I do that I'm truly an expert in, or that drives this business more than anything else? And then as the business grows, how much of my time am I allocating to that, right? So, in the beginning, like we said, it makes a lot of sense to do your bookkeeping, to keep costs down and that sort of thing. But that changes pretty quickly. For a lot of businesses, that's going to change in year one. If you have the ability to, drive anywhere from hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue an hour, it makes absolutely no sense for you to do the bookkeeping, right? You can find virtual bookkeepers or someone in your local area and, free up that time The other piece is, as a business owner, right, we want to have a life as well. So it's not just about reality.
You do? You have a life?
Yeah. It's not
Somebody,
just
I didn't
about,
get that. I didn't get that memo.
not just about driving revenue. You know, sometimes it's about, can I take some time off? Can I have some family time or go do some fun stuff? So, that would be the biggest thing, is to always be thinking about, how is the business owner, is my, 40 to 80 hour week divided up?
Well, time is money and quality of life is important. Well, Eddie Davis, thank you for being such a great guest on the Home Business Podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much. To learn more about Eddie Davis and FinSync, visit finsync.com or a podcast website for more information on guests.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Home Business Podcast. Share your feedback with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and at our website, homebusinessmag.com.
Visit the website for information on advertising, subscribe to our newsletter. Please visit our sponsors. For more information, visit homebusinessmag.com or the expo at homebusinessexpo.com.
I'm Richard Captain Henderson saying anchors away.
We'll talk with you soon. Until then,
Make it a great home-based biz day.